The Ukrainian summer offensive is coming to an end. Heavy losses and slow movement, coupled with the onset of the rainy season in Ukraine, means Ukrainian troops are forced to take on a defensive stance to fend off the inevitable Russian counterattack. New information coming from eastern Ukraine suggests that this is now becoming the reality. In several locations, Russian forces spending the entire summer huddled in their trenches are now making advances on Ukrainian lines. In two locations, rapid gains have been made, and another Ukrainian held Donbass Industrial Center is under siege. Today, we are going to talk about one of these surprising developments in the city of Avdiivka, which are causing massive problems for the Ukrainian army. This is not going to be a full frontline update and instead entirely focused on Avdiivka. I will have another video at the end of the week discussing other developments, but the nature of the assault on Avdiivka I think warrants its own video. The strategic city of Avdiivka is located almost directly north of Donetsk, the separatist city with a population of nearly 1 million people, and it has been held by Ukrainian forces for 10 years since the Ukrainian military expelled the separatists from the city in 2014. The industrial city's close proximity to Donetsk allows the Ukrainian military artillery coverage over many of the main transport arteries that run through the metropolis, which somewhat negate the logistical advantage a large city of this size would have. Avdiivka is critical real estate for both sides, and the Russians clearly want it. The first combat activity in the area was actually Ukrainian army movements that took place at the end of September, where the Ukrainians managed to force back the Russian army in the south and recapture the territory of the Avdiivka rock quarry near Opitny. Ukraine likely launched these assaults to preemptively better the defensive position of Avdiivka, knowing that an eventual Russian attack on the city was likely. On Sunday, October the 8th, Syriac maps reported the first movement of Russian forces in the Avdiivka sector for months, capturing territory along the M30 North Road north of the Betovka Donetska mine. On Monday the 9th, various Russian sources reported on an all-out attack on Avdiivka from the south, east, and north, and this has since been confirmed by battlefield footage originating from Ukrainian military bloggers. On Tuesday the 10th, Rybar, which is clearly a well-known pro-Russian source, provided the first mapping and claimed that the Russian army had advanced in a pincer north of town, crossed the railroad tracks, and laid siege to the town of Bierdichi, and are allegedly now fighting to capture Stabove. A similar move was made earlier in the year, but Ukrainian reinforcements drove the Russian advance back across the railroad tracks. In addition, Syriac maps, which I have found to be very reliable and neutral in their reporting, has claimed that Russian forces advanced south of Krasnogorovka near the Avdiivka coke and chemical plant. The reports that Avdiivka has seen several days of sustained combat, Russian advances, and constant heavy bombardment indicates that Russia is committing to a renewed effort to capture the city. Analysts seem to agree that the city is important for the Russians to capture in order to push the Ukrainian army out of artillery range of downtown Donetsk city. The fact Russia is committing significant resources seems to indicate they are no longer worried about the prospects of a Ukrainian breakthrough in the south, but we will get more into that and the prospects of an overall Russian success in the next video. It is also important to note that the online propaganda has been frantic with reports that troops from the Wagner mercenary group, still loyal to Russia, have re-entered the theater of war and have allegedly deployed to the area. So let's break down the various aspects of this battle, but first I ask that you please consider hitting both the like and subscribe buttons. Of course, this is free for you to do, but helps me immensely in keeping the channel running. As you may have noticed, I took a hiatus from creating new content, so views will be scarce in the beginning of my return, but that is expected. I also have to contest with a growing censorship regime that is plaguing Western nations and often results in limited reach for my content. So if you would like to support me directly, please consider donating either through the PayPal link in the description or via the super chat feature in the comments, but do not feel obligated to do so. This content is free for you to consume, but at the very least consider leaving a comment with your feedback or ideas for future videos. Thanks again, folks. Starting in the south, as previously mentioned, Russian forces reportedly advanced up the M30 highway north of the mine and probably captured this overpass of the Donetsk Ring Road. The overpass was likely a fortified position for the Ukrainians, as the thick concrete bridge provides great cover from artillery. This advance alone does not cause too much concern for the Ukrainians, as it is just one small position in a rather large and densely fortified urban area. But the next day, which was Monday the 9th, Russian forces launched an immense artillery barrage in the city and its surroundings, reportedly using everything from field artillery to rockets and large Fab 500 bombs. The main efforts of the assault were launched on the flanks of Avdiivka, which was already in a semi-encirclement. This assault was coordinated with an attack helicopter assault, which has proven in the past to be very effective for the Russian army. One such case was the battle for Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, where the Russians forced a Ukrainian retreat from the cities by threatening to cut off and surround their forces. In that assault, infantry and mechanized formations were accompanied by a mass formation of Ka-52 Alligator attack helicopters that provided close infantry support, reducing Russian losses on the ground, reducing the response time to battlefield threats, and increasing speed and likelihood of successful infantry assaults. This is not so unsimilar to American battlefield tactics, but it has been a rare event in this war, as exposing the advanced choppers increases the likelihood that they are shot down. Having a limited number of these attack helos means Russia has mostly used them sparingly in long-range hover and fire tactics. By Tuesday, October the 10th, the fog of war cleared, and it appears Russian forces picked up ground in 3 key areas. It is important to note that this is an ongoing battle, and the situation is rapidly developing. If Ukrainian reinforcements arrive and Russia cannot continue advancing, it is very possible these advances will be undone as they were in the past, but we will get into that. North of town, Russian units managed to recapture the railroad tracks and allegedly bypassed the town of Stepove and now lay siege to Ukrainian defenders in the town of Berdichi. If it holds true, this is by far the largest and most consequential land grab. Some military bloggers claim that after taking this territory, large formations of Russian infantry moved into the area and began to dig in. This salient is clearly vulnerable and should be the primary point of a Ukrainian counterattack. However, if the Russian army maintains control, this land is in a commanding position for them to block reinforcements arriving by rail, likely in the town north of here called Oxcherny. I apologize, it's not in the screen right now, where the Russians are reportedly already bombarding the rail depot and targeting Ukrainian reserves. The positioning of the salient places the Russians between Oxcherny and Stepove. It is important to note that as of yet there is no video evidence from the battlefield in these areas. Because of this, I have the territory shaded in white, saying that the status is largely unknown, but it's claimed to be captured by Russia. The next major development is slightly to the south, where Russian forces managed to capture a large landfill across the railroad tracks from the Avdiivka coke plant. As some of you, I'm sure, know, a coke plant is a key part of the steel manufacturing process. So it's a very, very large factory. I am unsure of exactly how this was accomplished so quickly, as the landfill towers over the countryside like a mountain and should have been relatively easy to defend, although recent combat footage shows massive columns of Russian armored vehicles in the area, which indicate the mound was likely swamped by Russian troops in a rapid assault. Of course, there's a chance that this information is inaccurate and the battle for the mound is still ongoing, but this is just the most recent information that we have. If Russia consolidates control over the landfill, then Russian artillery spotters will have a full view of the roads leading into Avdiivka from the west and could dramatically worsen the situation for Ukrainian soldiers in the immediate surroundings of the mound and even in Avdiivka itself. Recent reports also claim the Russians have already used this position to consolidate ground east of the railroad, and a battle is now taking place for control of the town of Stepove. The third axis of attack in the south took the longest to get reliable information on. The Russians did incur a significant setback here at the end of September, with Ukrainian forces recapturing that rock quarry between Vadian and Opitny, but video from the battlefield shows Russian units moving freely through the fields between Vadian and Severne. Some military bloggers have suggested that the Russian army managed to gain physical control over the road between Severne and Avdiivka. If this were true, then it would mean Ukraine only has two roads into Avdiivka now, similar to the situation that developed in the Battle of Bakhmut. But I do think this information is probably premature. Geolocated footage puts Russian armored vehicles very close to this road, so perhaps it is under fire control, but physical control seems less likely. And just give me a second here. I just noticed I do not have the town names on, so I will go ahead and get that for you guys. It takes away the roads, but I guess I could put this one on right here. There we go. All right, so yes, physical control seems less likely considering the nature of the war so far and how quickly Ukraine manages to launch counterattacks, but we will see about this information in the future. The source mapping for this comes from the Institute for the Study of War, which has marked the area as confirmed Russian advances rather than a claimed Russian land grab. ISW is a pro-Ukrainian source. Clearly, it's based in Washington, D.C. So when Russia captures territory, they typically look for a high degree of certainty before changing their maps. So in this case, I consider this to be reliable information. The last development to point out is in the fields north of Opitny. We do have reports of Russian troops advancing in this area, and the mapping also comes from the ISW. But I will note that this territory was previously captured by Russia, and the gains were reportedly undone by Ukrainian forces in the summer months. So it is possible that this section of the front was never updated by the ISW. So this could be an old report here. I honestly have no idea. So I have the territory marked as questionable, of course. So in general, the situation for the Ukrainian defenders in the area is very bad, but it is not lost. Outside of the landfill, the ground Russia has gained is mostly territory they managed to capture before, only to be pushed back. So I'm not going to predict the future here. I will say that the next steps for each side are. For Russia, they will likely be looking to move in significant personnel so they can both dig in to prevent Ukraine from recapturing the territory and have enough forces available to continue pressure on the weakest points. If Russia is ultimately successful, it will not be a quick battle. The fall of Avdiivka popping up in the news sometime in the next 2 weeks is very unlikely, but it is too early to really make that assessment. For Ukraine, counterattacking is critical. More important than the strategic position of Avdiivka is the resources stationed in the town, both men and equipment. I realize it might be counterintuitive to save men by throwing them into battle, but allowing encirclement of the city would be catastrophic for both morale and the fighting strength of the Ukrainian army, which some have suggested have nearly 15,000 troops stationed within the city of Avdiivka. The area north of town is very critical. Allowing Russian control over Berdichi and Stepove could result in a blooming of Russian gains and an eventual fall of Avdiivka. Berdichi is key because of the road that runs from Oxcherny to Avdiivka through the village, which is likely the main supply artery, and the direction reinforcements can most quickly arrive from. The Russians must be forced back across the rail line, and steps must be retaken to force them off the landfill mound. So some other relevant information here, I actually, um, based on the situation that previously arose in Bakhmut concerning supplies, I have added to the map an overview of the logistics on the Ukrainian side of Avdiivka. Keep in mind, this is, of course, isn't going to be entirely accurate, but I have created a color-coded system on the possible status of the roadways. I, obviously can't confirm that either, but based on their proximity and the news that we have heard, we've heard that, the Russians have captured the rail line, so which means the Bierditsy Stepove road is most likely closed. The news about the Severne Avdiivka road, it seems like it's probably under fire control, and based on where Russian front line is, that seems likely as well. And based on the amount of artillery bombardments we have seen, a number of the, almost all the roads leading into town are probably under constant bombardment. That doesn't mean they're under artillery control. Plenty of traffic can still move on these roads, but I basically have them labeled based on the level of danger. And of course, the blue line is the rail line. There are actually a lot more back roads than this, and this is flat terrain, so armored vehicles can move through the fields, but this will give you some idea of the situation. Of course, trucks with supplies are going to have to stick to the roads. I do not have this available for the Russian side. I could, but there is an enormous amount of roadways. Of course, the Russian side's basically Donetsk, so I'm not entirely convinced of the value of that at the moment. The outcome of this battle largely depends on the unknown statistics of the Ukrainian summer campaign. There are some key questions. How much manpower and combat capability does Ukraine have to fend off one assault? They likely have enough, but as we will go over in the next video, there are other locations of the front that Russia is making advances. So can Ukraine put out multiple fires is the question there. How much combat power does Russia have? Or has Russia learned from Ukraine's mistakes, or will they be plagued with the same issues of heavy losses in minefields that the Ukrainians suffered all summer? Of course, this entire area, the entire front is mined to hell by both sides, so keep that in mind. Without knowing the specifics, I cannot reasonably predict the outcome, but I will keep you updated as best I can. For now, that is all from me. Until next time.